I'm Colleen Ryan. I'm the Consulting Executive Director for the New York State CDFI Coalition, and we are so glad that you could join our All Hands Zoom today. While most of you, I'm looking at the screen, are CDFI executives, we do have a few special guests. So here's an elevator soundbite of what New York State Community Development Financial Institutions, or CDFIs, do. We provide financial services and education for low-income New Yorkers. We leverage federal and private dollars for economic development. We create market-based solutions that provide capital to chronically underserved communities across the state. And we promote responsible alternatives to predatory loans. Since 1995, the New York State CDFI Coalition has been the organizer and catalyst for strategic initiatives that help CDFIs and the communities they serve. The coalition provides a collective voice, allowing our members to stay locally focused while delivering impact associated with increased scale. That's one of the reasons we launched these all hands meetings. During the pandemic, the New York State CDFI Coalition Board got into a cadence of meeting by Zoom once a week at lunchtime. These Friday noon Zooms gave CDFI executives from across the state the chance to compare notes, express frustration, and collaborate on some of the biggest challenges of their careers. At least one of them noted that membership in the CDFI Coalition was a lot cheaper than therapy. We thought it would be a good idea to extend this opportunity to our members and convene a meeting every other month where we could share business updates, celebrate milestones, and give everyone a chance to ask questions. So first, some updates. During the height of the pandemic, the New York State CDFI Coalition fiercely advocated for a state law that would help protect small business borrowers from predatory lenders. The New York State Small Business Truth and Lending Act was signed on December 23rd, 2020, and the rules that will establish those protections were up for public comment late last year. On December 31st, we received correspondence from the Department of Financial Services, which read in part, in light of the significant feedback received, the department is carefully considering the comments received and intends to publish a revised proposed regulation for notice and comment early in the new year. Now, they call the bill the Commercial Finance Disclosure Law, but they have a mixed up acronym for it. They call it the CDFL. So while the Commercial Finance Disclosure Law by its terms become effective January of 2022, it assigns the department the responsibility of issuing the necessary regulations to implement the CDFL's objectives. In light of the public comments received and provider concerns about when they must comply with obligations under the CDFL, we have concluded that CDFL obligations do not arise until the department issues final implementing regulations and those regulations take effect. So effectively, they are going to open up another public comment period. And given the timing of public comment, how long that takes, responding to that, publishing the bill, we're probably looking at the earliest that this new law could take effect to be sometime in October. But I will let you all know when the next public comment period opens and where we stand with that. Along those lines, New York State Representative Nydia Velasquez and Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey have introduced a measure at the federal level, the Small Business Lending Disclosure Act, which is modeled after the New York State Small Business Truth and Lending Act, and that measure continues to work its way through committees. For updates on all of this, you can go to our website for more info. It's NYSCDFI.org, and then click under Our Work tab to see information on the Small Business TILA. So speaking of acronyms, we're also working on Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Training, or DEI. And we are happy to be working with Jennifer Rutledge of Delphi Consulting, who has also been engaged by LISC New York for similar training. These efforts are funded with a $20,000 grant from US Bank, for which we're deeply grateful. Last year, Jennifer shared a survey to establish a baseline for New York State CDFIs as where you were with DEI work in your own institutions. Have you dipped a toe in the water? Are you fully engaged in retooling all of your policies? Are you somewhere in between? So more than half of our members responded to the survey. And once Jennifer compiles the results, we'll be convening facilitated conversations around that work. So please watch for an announcement. So before I introduce our featured presenter, please start thinking about what you want to talk about during the Q&A at the end of the hour. Funding and financing, best practices, legislative issues, products or services for CDFIs, special events, or job postings. So while you put your thinking caps on, please join me in welcoming Ray Salibarios, Senior Vice President for Small Business Capital Access within Empire State Development's Community Economic Development Department. Ray, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, members, for inviting me, for the opportunity to present to you. I'm really looking forward to this. I see some folks here. I can't see everyone here, but I see Kim Jacobs. So I definitely want to say hello to Kim and Linda, Jules. So there are certain people that I've been talking to on a regular basis. So I just want to say hello to you guys. And I hope to continue coming to these meetings at least once a month. Colleen and I talked about this. So I want to make sure that what we're doing here at the state, especially with the things that are coming forward, that we keep open dialogue with each other, so that if there are any issues or concerns, I can address them quickly and try to make sure that things are addressed to the satisfaction of both parties, both the state of New York and the CDFI Coalition. So I guess I'll start by just addressing some questions or concerns that were sent to me by Colleen, and I just go through them. And then if I do it relatively quickly, then I can hang out for a couple of questions from there. So the first question was, when can we anticipate funds from the first tranche of New York State CDFI Assistance Fund? Okay, so I imagine this fund, we're talking about the one that recently was released. We call it the Unbanked Initiative, because the idea was to help New Yorkers who are currently without bank accounts, help them get banked. There also was a portion of those funds that were allocated to use to help micro businesses, and so TA also was involved there. So I got in contact with my team. So a good portion of folks have already received their money or are in the process of getting their money. So let me preface this by saying, those of you who work with New York State know that, let me make sure I say this carefully because I know this is being recorded. We're not the quickest folks around in getting money out, but we have a huge agency, a lot of buckets to fill. So at times we move a little like an ant with our piano on our back and getting things out, but we're working to fix that. I think we're doing much better now, and our communication process is open up. There are still a few CDFIs, and I won't go individually, but Colleen has my contact information. If you don't have my cell phone number, how about I give it to you now so that you can reach out to me directly and I can answer any questions you have directly. If Colleen, that's okay with you. My cell phone number is 646-599-6493. 646-599-6493. Every time I give out that number to a crowd, I remember I was in Buffalo. I was on the Wufu radio station, which is Wufu Radio, is in Buffalo. It's owned by Sheila Banks, I believe her last name is. She is the only African-American woman that owns a radio station in New York State. So I was on the air, I was talking to folks, and I felt good about myself. I felt great. So over the radio, I gave out my cell phone number. And when I did that, the host of the show was going like this: "Don't do that, Ray, don't do it." And I said to myself, well, we're in Buffalo. How many people are really listening to this AM station? So I gave it out. A few months later, my phone started blowing up with 716 calls. I guess more people than I thought had listened to the radio, heard my number, and started calling me up. That's fine. I addressed the concerns. I give my phone number out because it's hard to reach me, and I don't think it's prudent for me to be representing New York State and be unreachable. So we fast forward a year later, I'm in a meeting, all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up the whole day, 716. I answer the call, and I said, "Excuse me, how'd you get my phone number?" And they said, "I just heard you on the radio." So they rebroadcast the original broadcast, and I started that process over again. I did call Sheila. I said, "Sheila, please do not rebroadcast it," because there was just too many calls coming through. But in this case here, I welcome the opportunity to speak to every one of you. If you have issues, you call me up. My team and I are available. So any questions we can answer. So as far as the CDFI assistance program is concerned, like I said, the majority of folks are either received funds or have not or are in the process of receiving funds. There are a few cases where we are pending documentation. We didn't get a letter, we didn't get a GDA signed, things of that nature. And again, those of you that received awards and have not received funds, you can call me directly and I can put you in contact with my team and we can reconcile where you're at in the process. The next question was, when should we anticipate NOFA for the New York CDFI Fund for 2022? I just asked Colleen what NOFA meant, So now I know. And we just got the budget. The governor just discussed the budget. I just got to view the budget. The CDFIs have been allocated a similar amount that we've done every year. So we'll start that process again in April once the budget is signed and we're funded with the funds, and we'll go through the process. I think this year, though, we're going to be a little more stealth in making sure that the documents go out quickly, and then we communicate with you quickly if we're waiting for documents. Right? Depending on the amount of grant you're getting, there'll be certain requirements so far as documentation is concerned. So I'll make sure that my team is on board with this. Many of you have been dealing with Giovanna Miller. Giovanna has gone on to bigger and better things. Morgan Clark is now handling the CDFI initiatives for us. Those of you who reached out, I'm sure have talked to Morgan. She's amazing, always on the ball with things. So I think things will go smoothly as much as we can make it go smoothly. Will link deposit program for CDFIs be extended to non-depository CDFIs? Okay. So we originally wanted the link deposit program to be extended to all CDFIs, right? Depository CDFIs, non-depository CDFIs. We got some pushback. We pushed back, and we agreed that for the short term, that depository credit union CDFIs who will also be allowed to participate in link deposit program. CDFI credit unions and regular credit unions can now participate in the CDFI program. We're in the process of reintroducing the bill to allow non-depository CDFIs to also participate in CDFI in the link deposit program. There is positive feedback that I've received for allowing non-depository CDFIs to participate. We just have to have a conversation about, okay, how is it going to work with your banks, right? Will your bank allow you to participate in CDFI in the link deposit program? That should be easy because most of the CDFIs that want to participate in link deposit receive loans from their banks now anyway. So what we're trying to do is lower your cost of capital. For the non-depository CDFIs, the idea is to lower your cost of capital so you in turn can lower the cost of capital to the small businesses that you are funding, right? Because we're going to save you a couple of basis points. We're going to expect a portion of that savings to be passed on to your borrowing customers. For credit unions and CDFI credit unions, the link deposit program remains the same. We will deposit whatever the loan amount is to the bank, and then you'll pass that savings on to your borrower. So we're excited about link deposit. We still have like $350 million left in link deposit. So there is a lot of opportunity there. Some banks, some community banks use it. Not all banks utilize it. I think with the raising of interest rates next year that's being proposed by the feds, link deposit will once again be an important tool to have in your economic development programs. Any movement on setting the roundtable with the governor? Okay, so I was called in by the governor's office to provide some names, CDFIs, credit unions. So she wants to have a roundtable with CDFIs and credit unions about where we stand, what's the state of the economy, how do we better interact with that community, with the demographic of CDFIs and credit unions. That has not yet happened yet. I think the governor has a bunch of things on her plate, but it's going to happen. I just can't tell you exactly when. But I was assured that they're going to do this. That's why we went through the process of getting the names for everybody. All right, now, there was a question about discussing the specific funding opportunities for rural communities, specific to address transportation issues in rural counties. No, ESD, we look at economic development projects for the state as a whole. Some of them, they do focus on rural communities. I know that we have an agriculture fund. We actively look to help folks in distressed communities. I have a project now I'm working on in Allegheny County. So we're hoping that project goes through. We have another project working on in Buffalo. Nothing yet in Chautauqua County. And I promised a trip to two people, to John and to the mayor of Dunkirk, that I'll be down there soon. So I woke up this morning, it's 5 degrees. So today is not the day I'm going down to Saco County. I'll wait till it gets a little warmer because it's really beautiful down there. I've been there plenty of times. But I think we have to wait a little bit till the coronavirus becomes manageable again. But John, I have not forgotten my commitment to you. I have a bunch of people waiting for me in Saco County, so you'll be one of the guys that go down to. But getting back to the transportation issues in rural counties, we should talk about that offline. How can we help? What projects you have in mind, and see if there's something we can do. But I did want to answer that question by there's nothing that I know of that's taking place specifically for rural communities and transportation. I can tell you that what I found is that in rural communities, in distressed communities, there's a lack of supermarkets. There's a lack of places for people to go to get access to healthy foods. So my commitment is to work on that. I'm definitely working on that. I'm using funds that we're getting, and I'm going to target that and find out where there is a need to increase access to healthy foods to folks throughout New York State. You know, I was born and raised in the Bronx. Those of us live in New York City, we don't have that problem. There's a supermarket or bodega in every corner, right? But if you're in Allegheny County, that's not true. If you're in Orleans County, Yates County, that is not accurate. So I want to make sure we hit those counties and help them with their access to food and things of that nature. So that's a priority for me in the coming years. All right, so now what's best for last, right? New York SSBCI. Okay, so there was a concern about whether the SSBCI funds will be flowing through New York State or whether they were going to different entities. And I addressed that question directly with the Treasury. We meet with them and speak with them on a weekly basis. I can't wait for that to pass, but we speak to them on a weekly basis, and they have assured us. In fact, we're putting our application in, that the bulk of SSBCI funds is coming to New York State. What they haven't made a determination on is technical assistance fund, right? Rules and regulations and disbursement of technical assistance dollars have not yet been released by the Treasury. But again, we will ensure that a portion of it, the way they have it, I think if you look at the legislations, it says may do this or may do that. They may do this, they may do that. So they may give it all to New York State, all to the states. They may say, here's some for the states, here's some for the MBDA centers, here's some for local development organizations. We should keep in mind that MBDA centers are very, very well received by Vice President Kamala Harris. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of the technical assistance dollars go to the MBDA centers. And what I've said to the Treasury specifically is that, well, there's no MBDA center in Buffalo. There's none in Rochester. There's none in Albany. The only two in New York State, unless I'm missing something, are in New York City. One in my hometown, the Bronx. And I believe if Nancy's on the phone, she'll correct me. The other one is either Manhattan or Brooklyn. I believe it's in Manhattan though.
Yeah, Manhattan.
Right. So those are two MBDA centers in New York City. Now, what we have to do is work closely with Nancy and whoever gets the one in the Bronx and make sure that we fund projects to them, that we tell them where we need assistance so they could do more work upstate New York and less work in Pennsylvania and things of that nature. So I think the MBDA can do a good job, but we have to do a better job as a state of interacting with them. So it may be a good idea to have Nancy one day come in and talk to us about how the MBDA Center works and what funding is available and how do you access those funds. As far as SSBCI as a whole is concerned, so I just want to go real quickly because I know folks want to ask some questions. I promised someone I'll be off the phone in half an hour, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But I don't want to monopolize your meeting either. So there are certain pockets of funds that I believe are really important to CDFI community, right? And I'll start with, I've increased funding in each one of these pools from where they were 10 years ago, because the needs are different now than they were 10 years ago. We'll start with the Small Business Revolving Loan Fund. Many of you participate in the Small Business Revolving Loan Fund now. So what we did, we can increase funding to that to an excess of, where'd I put that here? So we are now looking at $35 million to fund the Small Business Revolving Loan Fund. And that includes the ability for us now to work with credit unions, CDFI banks, small community banks, and of course the CDFI, the regular CDFI Coalition. So we will be sending out information about that. We'll have some webinars to talk about how to access the Small Business Revolving Loan Fund. It's worked out tremendously. I mean, kudos to the small business, the CDFIs that are working on it now. Based on your hard work, we have $245 million have gone out in small business loans, thanks to the CDFIs that participate in the Small Business Revolving Loan Fund. There is going to be funds again for the Capital Access Program. We tripled the amount of money actually involved with the CAP program. I just want to address something because I'm sure someone's going to ask me this question about the current CAP program. We're down to the wire. There's still a couple of you who we have to go back and forth asking for documentation. But what we decided to do, which is really simple, what we're going to do is just every loan that you've made, if you look at your agreements, every loan that you've made from the inception of the program until March 2020 will be covered by the CAP program. So every loan that you've made prior to March 2020 will be covered by the CAP program. Now there is an amendment that talked about us sharing the monies after all the loans been paid and whatever's left over we would share. I did away with that. I got to write another amendment. Hopefully I won't have to write another amendment, that you folks will agree with me that in 5 years, all these loans should be paid off. Not everyone's going to go bad. The ones that have been paid off, every dollar left over in the CAP program, I think we just return it to the CDFIs. And that's what I plan on doing. I know the amendment talked about 75% sharing, but I don't think that makes sense in this environment. So basically what I'm going to do is 5 years from now, if I'm still here 5 years from now, but we're going to make sure we memorialize it, that 5 years from now, when all the loans are paid off, whatever money is remaining in the CAP program for CAP 1 will go directly to the CDFIs that participate in the program. Some of you will be receiving calls from us because we still need some documentation from you insofar as bank statements and things of that nature, but I won't spend too much time on that. We're going to have a contract, the financing program. I know Nancy, we spoke to you about it. We're going to fund that with about $15 million, and that's to help contractors who need assistance in accessing funds to help them get the working capital they need to work on contracts in New York State. What we have to do, what we have not done real well, is make sure that the lenders that participate in the program have boots on the ground in upstate New York. If a lender cannot support contractors in upstate New York, we will not fund them. Right? I think we want to kind of make sure that we understand that there are more counties upstate New York that need assistance. So we want to make sure that the CDFIs that we fund, the CDFI banks that may want to participate, the credit union may want to participate, have some type of presence in upstate New York. The final, yes, finally, we have a bunch of, look, there's venture coming, there's venture dollars. We think that you guys can help us in sourcing venture type transactions. Folks that come to you, startups specifically, that may need access to equity financing. We have a bunch of money for that. And I want to make sure that we partner to try to find out those companies that need the assistance. I want to end with this. We're going to try something new, which we're going to call patient capital, for lack of a better term. We want to help startups who may not qualify normally for debt financing. What we want to do is work with the CDFI community and say, okay, let's find a way that we can make a qualified loan to a startup or to a very early stage business where the first year or two, he's only paying interest. And we'll provide some of the capital for that. So that the first 2 years, he's only paying interest, he can continue growing his business and keep putting money back into the company. By year 2 or 3, he starts amortizing the loan. And we'll support that with capital and with TA assistance and work to help these startup companies. And these companies are early stage businesses that normally don't qualify for traditional, definitely not traditional bank financing, and may not qualify under our CDFI financing because of the newness of the company. So to end this is the idea of our CDFI program is to work predominantly with the CDFI community, CDFI credit unions, minority depository institutions, and CDFI banks. Right? That's who we're going to target. That's who I'm going to target. Now, obviously, there are going to be some community banks, small community banks in upstate New York that may need assistance. We'll work with them also. But primarily, we're going to target the CDFI community, CDFI credit unions, CDFI community banks, and minority depository institutions like Ponce Bank, to give you an example. A Spring Bank in my hometown of the Bronx. So what we want to do is just make sure that we keep the lines of communication open, right? We expect the first tranche of funds to be in the second quarter of 2022. Between now and then, we're going to be reaching out with information on how to apply, what's the process, what do we need, so then when we get the funds, we can just start sending the money out and start putting the money to work, which is the most important aspect of it. The SSBCI program requires that we make a targeted effort to help folks in what they call CDFI investment areas. It used to be called distressed communities. Now they're called CDFI investment areas. Want to target socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. We used to say MWBEs, and now it's socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. So the idea is to target those funds to steady individuals and to CDFI investment areas. I think I got everything, Colleen. I looked at the list. I think I answered all the questions. So I'll leave it to you how you want to proceed.
Thanks so much, Ray, for this great information. Really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with us. I've asked people to raise their hand to help me call on them in an orderly manner. So I see that Kim has got her hand raised. Let's go ahead and take a question. Let's go ahead and Jacobs.
Hi, Ray. Sorry, you didn't actually get rid of me. When you're talking about the CDFI TA funds, last year, I think several of us, I can't speak for everybody, saw a reduction in the amount that we received. And I'm hoping and assuming that it's because the funds went to a greater number of participants. So is that the case, or was the budget reduced? I'm just trying to understand if we need to try and make a case for increasing the funding because you're actually making that TA grant available to more CDFIs, or what exactly transpired there?
That is a conversation that I just finished having when I saw what the allocation was from the legislators. So yes, it is time for us to tell the legislature we need more money, because we want to work with CDFI credit unions, we want to work with CDFI, we want to work with the entire CDFI community, but we don't have, it's the base of CDFIs that we're working with has increased.
Mhm.
So, but the funds that were being allocated have not increased to the same degree.
Okay, that's what we needed to understand so that we know what to advocate for. Thank you.
Right.
And so let's call on Farshad now.
Hi, Ray. First, you're a brave man to give out your cell phone. I'm very impressed.
I want you to use it.
I'm sorry?
I want you to use it, so.
Okay.
For those of you who don't have a long-standing relationship with Ray, as Kim did, why don't you go ahead and quickly introduce yourselves and your institution so that Ray knows where you're from. Thank you.
Ray, actually, I am the
new
replacement for Kim Jacobs. I can never be a full replacement, of course. You know, I'm only at 10% of what Kim is, but I'm the new CEO of Community Capital of New York. And just some very quick background. I was coming from Wisconsin, and I was the head of the SSBCI program in Wisconsin back in 2010 through 12, when the first round of it. So I'm kind of a SSBCI idiot savant, so please bear with me. The only comment I wanted to, two quick comments. One is, with the TA money, Ray, I think it's important for New York to advocate that all the money be distributed through the states rather than through through the MDA or through private contractors, just because, as you noted, the other alternatives do exclude potentially lots of areas, right? And I think we would have faith in, Empire distributing that money perhaps as fairly and as efficiently. Also, you guys, New York, actually I'm part of New York now. New York carries a lot of weight, with Treasury. And I think that if you guys advocate for that, it will help. We're trying to do it, through the political side as well. But I really would like to encourage you to advocate for having all that money, not go through the other two channels, the TA money, but that it be distributed through you guys. The other quick point is, I'll call it the traditional SSBCI program, that maybe there's some thought given to how equity investment could be available to smaller CDFIs. Like for us, we're thinking we'd like to do, I'd like to bring a micro equity investment program, especially targeted to entrepreneurs of color, to kind of replicate something that was done in Wisconsin. But anyways, just have Empire perhaps think about, having some way to give the smaller CDFIs some access to equity money. There's also a technical point for us. When we have equity on our balance sheets, it also helps us with some things with the CDFI applications as well. So anyways, just another thing to think about.
Thank you, Farshad.
Real quick is that our Washington office, I've been in contact with them. They have been directly advocating for the funds to come to New York State. On my calls with the Treasury, I have directly advocated. And actually the last call I had with the Treasury, when we started the call said to me, Ray, I got you. We hear you. The money should be going to New York State. Let's get on to the next subject. And so we're in conversation with them. As far as the equity dollars is concerned, we just got to make sure that the CDFIs have the capacity to do it, right? Because we have, for our equity fund, we're doing the same thing that we do with the CDFI fund, in that we are investing in trusted partners like Launch New York, for instance. Those of you in Buffalo have heard of Launch. So Launch is one of the funds that we will let them do the investment. We'll provide the funds for them and go from there. If you can prove to us that you have the experience in the equity side of the business, then of course we'll consider, and of course we'll look to help you fund startups that need the access to venture capital.
Okay, Ray, I see 3 more hands raised. Do you have now 4?
Yeah.
Do you have time to take 4 more questions?
I just text someone and told them I'm not going to make it.
Okay.
Before Monday.
All right. So can we it's 12:37. If we could have you till 12:45, that would be great. So perfect. in order of hands raised, let's ask Victoria to go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Ray. Adirondack Economic Development Corporation. I'm our executive director way up in the very, very cold North Country today. I may take your offer to follow up with you on funding stuff, but I won't belabor that here. But my question was, did I hear you say that you saw best crystal ball, the SSBCI flowing by second quarter of this year? Or were you talking about that other startup assistance program?
Victoria, who I've spoken to on more than one occasions, thank you for reading yourself to me. I expect that we will have our application in before the deadline, right, which is February 11th. Right, I'm reviewing the application this weekend. I'm spending all my time reading the SSBCI documents. So I'm going to meet with the CEO, go over with her, and submit. The sooner we get it in, the sooner we get the funds. So my expectation is that in second quarter, based on what Treasury has told us, as far as the review process is concerned, second quarter of 2022 is more than reasonable. The key component for us as a group is to make sure we have all the participants in place by the second quarter. All right, I don't want to wait to get the money to start issuing the documentation. I want to do that beforehand. Once they tell me you're approved, which will be sometime end of February, I'm going to have my team reach out to everyone that we're targeting and saying, okay, folks, let's start getting the documentation rolling. Let's get the infamous GDA signed. Although actually there'll be more loan agreements than GDAs because SSBCI does not give us the opportunity to give out grants. So it really makes it easier for us. It's just a matter of boilerplate a loan agreement, sending it out to everybody. I believe depending on the dollar amount, we can't get around the lawyer's letter. I know it's a sticky situation for everybody, but if you're going to receive more than 100,000 from us, we're going to need the opinion of counsel. Other than that, it's just getting back the note to us and just funding the money. So we expect.
That's awesome. And then there's the startup assistance program you talked about. Is that going to be in queue after that once you can get the paperwork going for the SSBCI?
I can do that right away also. It's just a matter of who wants to participate. I'm going to need some private capital, as I'm sure you all realize the SSBCI requires a private match of $1 for every SSBCI dollar. It requires $1 of private financing. So if you are going to participate in the SSBCI program, you can't use New York State's fund as the match. You can't use SBA dollars as the match. They're still talking about the SBA dollars, but it has to be private capital, like if you borrow from your bank or for monies that may have recycled from us, that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Why don't we go to Melanie next?
Hey, hi. Hey, Ray.
No.
And I'm sorry if I missed this in your presentation, but the remaining committed $20 million tranche of funds to the CDFI fund, is that still out there? And is there a timeline for another set of grant requests, proposals?
All right, so I always try to manage everyone's expectations. I have not yet heard, but I put in a call to find out what's going on with the remaining $20 million. So I would not want to say, yes, it's definitely going to happen, but I know there's been talk about it. I just got to see where in the budget it is and where, because that money did not originally come from the budget. It came from another source. So I am hopeful that we'll just continue with the program if there's a need for it. So I cannot answer you yes or no, Melanie, definitively now.
And Ray, just a quick follow-up. Is there anything, I don't know if you can answer this, but is there anything that we should be doing on the advocacy side for those funds?
Well, if it wasn't for the work that you did, the CDFI community did for the first round, there would be no $5 million fund now. So I would suggest you continue advocating and asking the question, is there going to be an additional $20 million for the fund?
Something like you promised. Where is
You
it?
can say that. You know, the good thing is that you have Governor Hochul is a champion of the CDFI community. So she is on board with how important the CDFI community is. So I think you have a very, very open person who wants to help the CDFI community in the form of Governor Hochul.
Thanks, Ray. Let's go to Mika now.
Hey, Ray, thanks for joining us. I'm Mika Gioseffi, Executive Director of the Cooperative Fund. I have an SSBCI related question. SSBCI 1.0 excluded acquisition of existing businesses as an eligible use, but the Treasury's guidance said for SSBCI 2.0, if that acquisition is being conducted by a worker co-op or an ESOP, then it would be eligible if the states include that waiver, that exception in their proposal. I'm wondering if that's on the radar of New York and if that's included in the program.
Well, because one of the things that we require from SSBCI is that we have existing legislation in place for the money we're going to fund. So I thought about that based on the folks in New York City, the workers cooperative in New York City, right? I said, I better have something in place. And I do. I have a fund that currently allows us to use those funds exactly for the purpose you mentioned. So I'm not worried about that at all. I have dedicated $62 million, not for workers, not for the workers behind their business, but for large capital projects. So we have money set aside just specifically for that type of purpose. Yes, don't worry about that. If you find one, let's get it done. In fact, we have a call. One of the assemblymen is a champion of yours, and I have a call with them this week to speak specifically to that issue.
That sounds great. We're mostly working upstate, so we're not yet part of the city coalition, but
Okay.
but I'd love to hear more another time about that. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, let's go to Charlie Hammerman.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, hey Ray, how you doing?
Hey, Charlie, how are you?
I just sent you an email with a couple of points, so it could be in front of you, but just two quick ones. You mentioned this venture capital or equity. We actually have a very active venture capital part of our portfolio of our balance sheet is in private equity and venture capital for businesses with disabilities. So I'd like to follow up with you on that because I want to understand the parameters of who you'd want to be introduced to in terms of size and locale and everything else. The other thing is, just so you know, I asked in the email, when you are hopefully getting this roundtable set up with the governor or the governor's representatives, please make sure that we are included in terms of representing people with disabilities. We are having a private meeting with the commissioner of OPWDD down here on Long Island to talk about economic redevelopment with regard to whether it's housing as well as businesses and employment for people with disabilities. And then we're going to try to bring that around the state. So it'd be great if we can combine everything with what you're trying to talk about, because having separate conversations doesn't make any sense.
That's fine. I'll talk to the team to put together. And Charlie, you're gonna get a call from Jennifer Teagan sooner rather than later. Jennifer manages the venture fund for us, so I'll make sure to reach out to you directly. And you can talk to her. And Jennifer's very open. I told Jennifer that we have to do more outreach to the CDFI community to see how we can help them and use them as a source, as a resource for access to folks that need equity investments.
Well, just I'll explain to Jennifer and everybody on the phone as well. There's actually a group called the Social Venture Circle of high net worth individuals and foundations that we're members of, that meets on a monthly basis to put money into New York-based new entities. And obviously there's a social impact sense of it, whether it's ESG or anything else. So in addition to whatever the state's bringing to the table, we potentially have private dollars to also supplement that with whatever you're trying to do in your program. So we'll help you along in that regard as well.
Absolutely.
And Charlie, just in case you didn't look through the full participant list, Babby Jacobs, who's involved with Social Venture Circle, is on this call. So we certainly have a lot of interest from
there you go.
impact investors. So, all right, well, that being said, I really want to thank Ray for his time, extra time. It's now 12:47. So cheers to Ray. And yeah, we will make sure to bring you back. Let's make this a regular thing. All right, Ray, because there's such a lot of information that you've been able to share with us, and we deeply appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to work with every single one of you. Thank you again. You have my cell phone number, so let's make it happen.
Thanks, Ray. All right, if everybody else can stick around, don't all run off when Ray goes. I know how you are. All right. Okay, so Ray is gone. Woo! That was a lot of information. Thank you all for your good questions. And yeah, if you want to take yourselves off mute, shout about some stuff, now's the time. Any quick thoughts on what he had to say or what he didn't have to say, or where we stand, or how I might follow up?
It sure seems that there's a lot of programs and new programs, potential for us all to access and, have stronger activities going, but that it seems to be caught up in the lack of staffing right? Or turnover, staffing, all of the above. It's really kind of disturbing to see the good initiatives even, and the funding out there when, I mean, even just the getting paid, right? I know we sit on, and I'm sure most organizations are sitting on a pretty big line of credit that is expensive because they just can't simply get payments processed. So it's not just even programmatically, it's the payables, it's the whole thing. I don't know. I mean, maybe this is just a complaint, but I mean, I feel Ray's pain and Morgan's pain because, I mean, we keep asking questions about all of this. When's this happening? When's this happening? When's this going to get paid? Seems like a broken record, but on the other hand, it's really not acceptable. I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe it's just a complaint on a Friday. Maybe I need to get to 5 o'clock.
That's what we're here for, Victoria. But yeah, I think you're not alone in that feeling.
Follow up on that real quickly, maybe a show of hands about who we've been lucky. We have gotten our, or maybe we can do this as an email, but we have gotten our grant money out of the first tranche of 5 million. But last call we had board members. I believe we were the only ones. So it'd be good to know if anybody else has gotten there.
Ray said that 14 payments had been processed. So 14 out of the 30 odd that they announced. How many on this call? Melanie, put your hand up. Has anybody else gotten their first tranche of money that was, applied for in February, announced in August, press release in October, and it's now January of 2022? Who's gotten paid other than Melanie? Okay, good to know. All right.
But to speak to Victoria's point, there has been in the past also slippage in the contracts, right? That every year we're losing a couple of months because they can't get the contracts processed. So this staffing issue at ESD is a continuing problem. And I think that, if we have an opportunity to speak with the governor at the round table or whatever, that we should definitely add that to our bullet points, because it's great to have all this money, but if they can't actually get it out the door, it doesn't really help anyone.
Charlie or Farshad, do you want to wrestle for this? Charlie, your mic's open, so go ahead.
I don't know. I don't know how to, I don't have a response.
Okay, all right, Farshad, you've got your hand up.
Just on 2 things. One is, Colleen, and I actually think it's you in particular. I don't know, actually, since I don't know the backgrounds of everybody in the group, but I actually don't know if Empire alone, if it's just not staffing. Again, being a longtime bureaucrat, from the state agency, I'm curious about whether there's an issue with, I'll call it the finance side or the audit side. In other words, the program people at Empire approve our application, and then it goes and it has to get, all the information has to be essentially audited or approved by the finance people before the payment happens. And so Ray can control that first part, right? That's his people, but he doesn't perhaps control that other side. Now, again, I am new. I'm coming in as a newcomer, so I don't know whether, to what extent this might be the case. But for those of you guys that are knowledgeable about the intricacies of the bureaucracy, I'm not saying, we all know that Empire, even me being here just a couple months, knows that Empire is understaffed. But I also just get the sense, like as an old bureaucrat, that there's more involved here, that there's systematic stuff that we also need to figure out how to address. But the reason I'm sorry, this is so long-winded, Colleen, is I think that this type of, I'll call it bureaucratic issues, if the governor speaks to it or makes it known, look, you guys get together and figure this out, that stuff can get worked out. But anyways, it might be helpful, again, to get the governor's attention to this so that at least the bureaucracy part gets solved. Again, I'm not questioning the lack of staff, but again, as being a long-term, bureaucrat, something tells me that there's a finance or audit side to this, the guys that have to sign off, because I can only talk about our application. What happens is there's kind of a trickle for, we don't hear anything for months, and then they want like one piece of information from us. And that's kind of what piques my, bureaucratic concern about this. If that's just not something the program person would already have all that stuff. But anyways,
Yeah.
that's just something to bring up. The other one is more of a technical thing that I may just call Ray on, but it might affect other people here. And that is for the regular SSBCI money. It hasn't been clarified if you can use that money for housing, specifically to support operating businesses that do housing. And this might be, again, I think it's especially important potentially from a mission perspective to support developers of color that might be, in the housing industry, who do single family, housing in some way or other. In the new market tax credit side, they did do a clarification to allow that. That's why Habitat for Humanity, for example, has used new market tax credits quite a bit for housing. At the national level, when I was in Wisconsin, I tried to advocate for using the same language or regs, for the SSBCI program. But that's another thing we might just want to keep in queue, and maybe Ray ask about. I know that some of us are involved, in housing as well, but I do know that that could be a really valuable resource for especially smaller developers of color that may just be too small to participate in LIHTC and some of the other programs.
Thanks, Farshad. I know that I'm mindful of the time. It's 5 minutes to 1, and I know that people are going to have to start to bounce for other calls. But Melanie, do you want to give a quick pitch for membership? I'm just going to say, if you value these kinds of calls, I will be sending around your membership renewal information. We really appreciate your membership support. So Melanie, as a co-chair of our membership committee, why don't you go ahead and make a pitch?
No, I think you covered it. So I would like to say it would be great, since we didn't have time to do a go around with introductions, to get a list of everybody who's on the call. That'd be great. Yeah, just look out for the letter. I think with Colleen's unbelievable work, we've really reached new levels. So thank you, Colleen. And, having so many people on the call is just a testament to how far forward we've gone in the last couple of years. So important to keep the momentum going, and can only do that if you all join.
Thank you for that. What I will do is next week, I will upload the video, the recording of this, so that we can all go back and check our notes and write down Ray's phone number in case we didn't. So I will share the recording. I'll also share the participant list. So if there are any sidebars that you want to have with some of the people on the call, things that you want to take up specifically, I urge you to do that. I mean, we can't always do everything as a group, and there are certain among you who might be better suited to kind of partner up with 2 or 3 other people and attack this. So if there's something that, that you come up with that you could use coalition support on, please just drop me a line, and I'm happy to help facilitate that. But I urge you as individual leaders, to reach out to others and try to establish these partnerships so that we can address some of these policy issues. Really appreciate it. All right, anybody else got anything? Then I want to thank you all very much for your time. Stay warm, stay safe, and we will meet again as the committee of the whole. Our next all hands meeting, I believe, will be Friday, March 18th, if I'm not mistaken. So watch your inbox for the invitation, and thanks again, and have a great weekend.